He did not come into the courtroom to make a statement. He was not there for pride, or protest, or spectacle. He came because he had to, called for jury duty like any other citizen, dressed the best way he knew how in the only formal where that still fit him. After all these years, a faded military uniform from a war no one talked about anymore. The security guard did not question him. The bailiff gave a nod, but when he stepped in front of the judge's bench, the courtroom chuckled softly at first, then louder, and the judge, smirking from the bench, said, "Sir, you are not auditioning for a parade." The old man stood still, silent until the clerk quietly handed the judge a slip of paper with one name on it. That name changed everything, because the judge did not smile after that. He stood at full attention. Welcome to endless stories where uniform threads may fade, but the names behind them never will. If this story moves you, subscribe, stay, and help us honor every man and woman whose silence still commands respect. He did not have a closet full of suits. Never needed one. After he got out, he bought one nice coat for funerals and wore it twice, once for a neighbor he barely knew, and once for his commanding officer. Other than that, what he wore was simple, clean, and quiet. But on the morning his jury summons came, he opened the cedar box at the back of the closet, pulled out the only formal wear that ever felt like it belonged to him, and ran his hand over the fabric like it might still remember the weight of what it once carried. The uniform was not pressed perfect anymore. The metals had dulled. The creases did not sit as sharp as they used to, but it still fit, and more importantly, it still meant something, at least to him. He took the early bus downtown, sat near the back, did not speak. People glanced his way now and then, probably wondering what parade he had come from or was headed to. He did not correct them, let them think what they wanted, because not every appearance is for show, some are for memory. When he arrived at the courthouse, the guard looked up, blinked, and opened the door without a word. Maybe he recognized the badge, maybe he did not. Either way, he nodded with something close to respect, and that was enough. Inside, the waiting area buzzed with low conversation and idle. Tapping on phones, he did not sit, just stood near the corner, hat in hand, eyes forward, not watching anyone, but not missing anything either. People noticed him the way they notice things they cannot explain, curious, cautious, half impressed, and half confused. The bailiff called for his group, he followed. No questions, no hesitation, just calm, steady steps down the hallway, lined with faded portraits of judges and flags no one really looked at anymore. When he stepped into the courtroom, he stood a little taller, not out of pride, out of habit, because some rooms demand posture even when no one else remembers why. And when his name was called, and he stepped forward, that is when it started. The smirk from the bench, the chuckles from the gallery, the quiet murmurs like a ripple of misunderstanding spreading fast across still water. But he did not flinch, did not defend himself, did not say a word, because he knew something they did not, and they were about to learn it. The courtroom was not full, but it only takes one laugh to fill the space where respect should be. It started as a light chuckle from somewhere in the jury pool, someone young, probably thinking the old man in uniform looked like a leftover from a history textbook, not a real person. Then another followed, this one sharper, more amused, and this time it came from behind the bench. The judge, seated high in his robe with a gavel in one hand and a half-empty coffee cup in the other, leaned back with an easy smirk. He tapped the gavel gently, not to command silence, but to punctuate his joke. "Well," he said, eyes on the old man, "did not know the Veterans Day parade came early this year." A few more snickers trickled through the room, like kids laughing at something they did not fully understand, a joke they were not brave enough to make, but comfortable enough to enjoy. The man in uniform did not move, did not lower his head, did not smile. He just stood there, hands at his sides, expression unreadable, as if he had heard that same tone before, not in a courtroom, but in briefing rooms where people with too much authority made decisions without enough understanding. The judge clearly did not expect a response. He turned back to the file in front of him, flipping pages casually until the bailiff leaned in and whispered something in his ear. The judge raised an eyebrow. The bailiff handed him a sheet of paper, not a legal document, not a form, just a single printed name at the top. And then the room changed. The judge stared at the paper longer than necessary. His eyes scanned the name once, then again, and the hand holding the coffee cup slowly set it down without a sound. He cleared his throat quietly this time and leaned forward, not to speak, but to rise. He stood up, straightened his robe, and gave a full, sharp, practiced salute. The chuckle stopped. Every head turned, and the old man still had not said a word, because he did not have to. The name had already done all the talking. It was not a name people read in textbooks. It was not carved into a monument or posted on a town square wall. But to the judge and to a handful of men who once stood shoulder to shoulder in a place half a world away, it was a name that echoed louder than gunfire and lingered longer than smoke. Master Sergeant Elijah Cain, the kind of name that came with a reputation earned, not given. The judge did not just recognize it, he remembered it. In the grainy photos they passed around in briefings, in whispered stories swapped between deployments, in the classified reports with redacted lines, and the few names that were not crossed out. Cain was the man who had carried 2 of his team members out of an ambush zone after both legs were shattered. He was the man who went back in for the 3rd, even after the medevac had already lifted. And he was the man who never gave interviews, never accepted medals in person, and disappeared from public life, like smoke slipping through a broken window. People said he lived somewhere up north. People said he had passed years ago. People said a lot of things, because Cain never said anything himself. And now here he was, standing quietly in a courthouse, being laughed at by people too young to know what he gave up, and too loud to hear what silence sounds like when it comes from someone who has earned it. The judge did not speak for a long time, not because he did not have words, but because the ones he would have used before suddenly felt too small. Finally, he lowered the paper, walked around the bench, stood in front of the man in uniform, not as a judge, but as a soldier who remembered. He did not offer a handshake. He did not apologize. He just looked him in the eye and said, "Master Sergeant Cain, welcome back." And in that moment, every title in the room, judge, lawyer, clerk, citizen, meant less than one simple truth. Some names do not need introductions. They only need to be remembered. Everyone thought he might say something, a nod, a simple thank you, maybe even a quiet joke to break the tension. But he did not. He just stood there, same posture, same silence, as if the moment did not belong to him and never had. The judge took a step back, clearly unsure of what came next. He had seen war veterans before, honored many in ceremonies, but never like this. Never standing in his courtroom. Never after being laughed at by his own voice. A young clerk near the edge of the room cleared his throat, the sound almost too loud in the stillness. He opened his mouth, hesitated, then closed it again. There were a dozen things he wanted to ask. Was it true you saved your whole unit? Did you lose someone close? Why did you come in uniform? Why disappear for so long? But none of the words came out, because there is a certain weight to presence that language cannot hold. Because when a man like Cain walks into a room, he does not speak for himself. He carries names, moments, entire histories that have no place in headlines, only in memory. One woman in the back, a public defender with tear-rimmed eyes and a bronze star in her own family, finally whispered to no one in particular. He did not come to be recognized. And that was the truth. He had not. He had shown up because he was summoned, not because he wanted attention, not because he expected it. He came because the system asked, and he believed in answering when called, even if that system had forgotten how to answer for him. The room remained still, unsure whether to sit, to speak, or to let him pass. So Cain made the choice for them. He gave a single nod to the judge, turned with quiet steps, and walked back to the row of jurors without looking back. No medal, no correction, no drama, just discipline. The kind that speaks louder than any explanation. And somewhere in the silence he left behind, even those who had laughed began to feel the sting of their own noise. He was not dressed like someone who belonged in a courtroom. Jeans too ripped, hoodie too loose, earbuds still hanging around his neck like they were waiting for the world to stop talking. He had wandered in out of obligation, a civic studies assignment, extra credit for court observation, something to make up for a failing grade, and a few too many skipped classes. But the moment Cain walked in, something about the way he stood, not proud, not defiant, just anchored, made the boy sit up straighter. And when the judge cracked that first joke, when the laughter rolled through the room like a wave that did not care who it crushed, he laughed too. Reflex, not malice. But when the judge stood, when he saluted, and when Cain did not even blink, the boy's chest tightened in a way he could not explain. It was not guilt, Not exactly. It was the kind of silence that echoes back at you when you realize you have just witnessed something important and almost missed it because you were busy playing the wrong part in the room. After Cain sat down, again, the boy did not look away. He watched him, studied the lines in his face, the faded patches on his uniform, the way his hands rested calmly in his lap, like they had held more than anyone could ever understand, and somehow let go without shaking. And something inside him, something restless and young and loud, went still. When court recessed for lunch, most people filed out fast, checking phones, whispering about how strange the morning had been. But the boy stayed seated, heart pounding for reasons he could not name. Then he stood, walked across the room slowly, stopped just short of where Cain sat, and did not say a word. He just nodded. And Cain, the soldier no one recognized until it was too late, nodded back. No lecture, no story, just a moment passed between them, quiet as breath. And for the first time in his life, the boy realized that respect did not always sound like sir. Sometimes it sounded like silence earned. He had not meant to speak. Judges are not supposed to explain themselves. Their robes are walls, not windows. But after recess, when the room had settled, when the gallery had emptied, and the jurors returned with eyes softer than before, the judge stayed standing, not behind the bench, but beside it, hands folded, voice low, not commanding, but remembering. Most of you do not know this, he began. But before law school, before the robe, before I ever spoke in front of a courtroom, I stood in a room that smelled like oil, metal, and blood. No one moved. Cain did not look up, but something in the air turned still, respectful. The judge took a breath, slow and shaky. During my first deployment, I was assigned to a forward unit near Kandahar. Intel got messy. The drop zone was off. We lost contact with our lead in the first hour. 2 of our boys went down, and we did not know what was waiting past the ridge. We were pinned, uncoordinated, outnumbered. He paused, not for effect, but to find the part of him that could still say the next part out loud. And then this shadow moved through the dust. No insignia, no words, just 2 hands, one carrying a rifle, the other dragging one of our wounded. He looked across the room, but not at Cain, not yet. He carried 2 of ours back, came in like smoke, left before the dust even settled. Never gave a name. We thought maybe he was a myth, some ghost our minds made up to feel less lost. Now his eyes locked on Cain, steady, clear. Until today, Cain did not speak, did not nod, just blinked once, and that was enough. The judge turned back to the courtroom. So, for anyone wondering why I stood, it was not because of a title, or a medal, or a uniform. He let the silence answer. It was because I am standing today because he walked in that day. No one laughed after that, not even once. His apartment was as quiet as ever. 1 chair, 1 table, 1 small photo framed on the mantel, black and white edges, worn faces, half smiling in a place that had not existed for 20 years. Cain walked in, removed the jacket, folded it slow, deliberate, like he was still in the barracks. He opened the drawer beneath the mantel and pulled out the letter. Same envelope, same crease, still sealed. He had written it the night after they pulled back, after the smoke cleared, after the silence grew too heavy to carry in his chest. It was addressed to a man whose name no longer appeared on rosters, who never got his final promotion, who never made it home to meet the baby girl named after his sister. Cain never sent it, not because he did not mean it, but because some words do not belong to the living. They stay folded like flags, waiting for the right silence to wrap around them. He opened it now slowly, the paper soft with time, ink slightly faded, but every word still sharp. Caleb, you did not run. I know some might say it does not matter now, but it does. You did not run. You covered me. You gave the signal. You made the choice. I should have pulled you out first, but I did not see the wire. You did. And I know what you would say if you were here. You would laugh, say, you were always the stubborn one, Sarge. Maybe I was. I have carried your name every day since. I never said it in public, never carved it in stone, but it is in the quiet when the wind shifts. It is in the way I walk slower past playgrounds. It is in the seat I leave empty at the bar. And today, someone finally said my name again out loud, not because of what I did, but because they remembered what you gave. It is still not enough, but it is something. He folded the letter gently, slid it back into the envelope, and this time, instead of hiding it, he placed it on the table where the morning light would hit it. Some stories do not need to be sent. They just need to be read, even if it is only once, by the man who wrote them. He did not knock, did not call ahead, did not even know for sure if Cain still lived in that quiet second-floor apartment with the view that overlooked nothing but brick and wind. But he came anyway. A week had passed since the courtroom, since the nod, the silence, the moment that sat heavy on his chest longer than he expected. It was not guilt, not anymore. It was something different, something like respect trying to become action. He stood outside the door for a full minute before raising his hand, then lowered it again, then knocked once. Quiet. Cain opened it a few seconds later. Not surprised, not startled, just present, like he had been expecting someone eventually, even if he did not know who. The boy did not try to explain why he was there. He just reached into his backpack and pulled out a small, weathered box. Not the original. This one was handmade, rough wood clearly sanded by someone who had not done it before, but it was careful, intentional. He offered it with two hands. "I built this for your medal," he said. Cain looked at the box, then at the boy, then slowly took it, the way someone receives something heavier than it looks. He did not speak, did not need to. The boy shuffled his feet, unsure what to do next. "I did not know who you were that day," he said, "but I think I needed to." Cain gave a small nod, barely there, but real. The boy turned to leave, then paused. "You think maybe one day, you could tell me more about the others, about Caleb?" Cain's eyes shifted slightly. He had not said that name aloud in years. But now it did not hurt the way it used to. Maybe that was the beginning of something. He stepped back from the door, opened it wider, not a full invitation, just enough. The boy smiled, not wide, not loud, and stepped inside. Because sometimes the most important conversations do not start with answers. They start with someone who finally cared enough to ask. The room had not changed. Same chair, same mantle, same photo resting quietly above a drawer that once held medals, letters, and names spoken only in silence. But something about the space felt different now. Not louder, just fuller. Cain sat in his chair, box in his lap. The new one, the handmade one, the one that did not come from a government issue, but from a boy with shaking hands and steady eyes. Across from him, the kid listened, not with questions, not with a recorder or notebook, just presence. Cain did not start with war stories. He did not talk about battles or blood. He began with music, the kind Caleb used to hum when they would sit under a half-working lantern, trying to drown out the waiting. He talked about the way Caleb wrote his sister's name into every field report just in case he did not get the chance to write a real goodbye. He talked about laughter between firefights, bad coffee, worse boots, and the way a man learns to say so much with a look when radios go quiet. The boy did not interrupt. Not once. Hours passed like minutes. The sun shifted, and for the first time, the medal came out of the drawer. Cain did not put it on. He did not need to. He opened the new box, placed it inside, closed the lid slowly, and handed it to the boy. "Not for you," he said, "for when someone asks why I did not speak sooner." The boy held it like something alive. "I will tell them," he promised. Cain nodded once, and that was enough. Because sometimes silence is not about ignoring, it is about awaiting. Awaiting the right voice to honor the name forward. Not in speeches, not in parades, but in the quiet rooms where stories are finally understood. Thank you for staying through this chapter. This was not just a story about a courtroom. It was about silence earned, carried, and finally recognized. About how sometimes the loudest truths are the ones spoken without saying a word. If this story moved something in you, if it reminded you of someone who never asked for recognition but always deserved it, then do not let it stop here. Subscribe to Endless Stories. Share this with someone who has worn a uniform or loved someone who has. Leave a comment with the name you still honor because some names deserve to be heard again and again, one story at a time.